The man in the shadows. Rain fell softly on the rooftop of the quiet building in Palo Alto, whispering secrets to the night. Inside, the lights were still on, even though it was nearly midnight. Sundar Pichai sat at his desk, the glow of his laptop painting tired shadows across his face. He had been working for hours, his mind tangled with decisions that only grew heavier as the company grew larger. But outside his glass office, standing in silence by the door, was a man most people didn't notice. His name was Arjun. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. He had been by Sundar's side for 15 years. Not just a bodyguard, Arjun had become something more. A silent shield, a steady hand, a presence that brought calm even during the worst storms. He had protected Sundar through chaos, protests, threats, and moments of real danger that the public never heard about. He remembered them all, even the ones Sundar had forgotten. Arjun remembered the day Sundar almost collapsed from stress before a keynote speech. He had quietly brought him water and simply stood nearby without saying a word. He remembered when a stalker tried to break into Sundar's home and how he had stopped the man without drawing his weapon or making a scene. These were not stories anyone ever told. There were no headlines. There were only long silent nights, shared glances, and unspoken trust. But something changed that week. It started small. Arjun noticed how Sundar stopped meeting his eyes. How? Some of the other executives whispered in corners when he walked past. He felt something strange in the air, like a storm brewing behind closed doors. He had been in enough dangerous situations to know what it felt like. That moment right before something breaks on a Tuesday afternoon. During a board meeting, Arjun was told to wait outside. That was normal. What wasn't normal was what happened after a man in a gray suit walked up to him with a cold smile. His name was Michael, someone from corporate security. Arjun had seen him around, but had never spoken to him before. "You're not needed anymore," Michael said, handing him an envelope. "You've been relieved of duty. Effective immediately." Arjun stood still, relieved. He asked quietly, not sure if you heard right. Michael nodded. "The company thanks you for your service. You've done well, but things are different now. We're moving in another direction." He didn't shout. He didn't argue. He didn't even ask for an explanation. Instead, Arjun looked toward the closed meeting room door. Sundar hadn't come out. Sundar hadn't said goodbye. That night, Arjun went home in silence. He placed the envelope on his small kitchen table and didn't open it. He sat there in the dark, surrounded by the quiet hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, and 15 years of memories that didn't seem to mean anything anymore. He thought about the time. Sundar's car was nearly rammed off the road by an angry protester and how he had driven them both to safety without panicking. He remembered the time Sundar had forgotten his son's birthday and how Arjun had reminded him and bought the gift on his behalf. These things had mattered once. But now they felt like old stories from a life that no longer existed. 3 days passed. Arjun still hadn't opened the envelope. Then something strange happened. A package arrived at his door. No name, no sender, just a small white box. Inside was a phone and a note. The note said, "Watch carefully. Protect him. This is not over." The phone buzzed. A video played. Grainy security footage from inside the building. Arjun saw Sundar talking to a man he didn't recognize. The man leaned in close. Sundar looked nervous, his hand gripping the edge of the table. Arjun knew that body language. It wasn't business. It was fear. The video ended. The screen went black. Then one final message appeared. "You were not fired. You were removed. They are coming for him. Again." Arjun sat frozen. The rain tapped against his window, a slow, steady rhythm like a warning. He had spent 15 years protecting Sundar from the outside world. Now, it seemed the real danger was coming from within. He stood up slowly and looked out the window into the darkness. He was no longer a bodyguard. He was the only one left who knew the truth. And he was going back. The quiet betrayal. Arjun didn't sleep that night. His thoughts were loud, louder than any storm he had faced in the past. 15 years of loyalty didn't just vanish. It wasn't just a job. It had been a purpose. And now someone had taken it from him. Not with a fight, not with a warning, but with a quiet lie whispered through polished smiles. The next morning, Arjun packed a small bag. Not much, just what he needed to move silently. A second phone, a notebook filled with old contacts, a worn-out photo of him and Sundar laughing in the background of a company event, both unaware someone had captured the moment. Back then, the world still felt honest. He didn't know who sent the package, but he knew what he saw. Sundar wasn't safe. Something was off. And if Sundar was in danger, then Arjun wasn't finished. His first stop was a man named Ramesh, a quiet janitor, who had worked at the building almost as long as Arjun had. They had shared 1,000 nods and quiet conversations in late-night hallways, always respectful, always unnoticed by the people rushing past. Arjun found him sweeping leaves outside a small temple. "I need your help," Arjun said. Ramesh looked up, eyes narrowing. "They said you retired," he replied. Cautious. Arjun shook his head. "I didn't." Ramesh didn't ask for more. Instead, he wiped his hands on his shirt and nodded. "Come," he said. They sat on a low concrete bench behind the temple. Arjun asked if anything strange had happened in the building the last few weeks. Ramesh hesitated, then slowly told him about a man who had started showing up late at night, always wearing a badge that didn't look right, always checking rooms he had no reason to be in. Ramesh had tried to ask questions, but the man just stared at him like he wasn't even there. "Did you get a name?" Arjun asked. Ramesh nodded. He told one of the guards his name was Leon. The name didn't mean anything to Arjun. Not yet, but he wrote it down. The next few days, Arjun moved carefully. He didn't go near the building, but he watched it from a distance. He noticed that Sundar's schedule had changed. He wasn't walking outside for calls like he used to, and the windows in his office were always shut. He looked more guarded, more tense. Not the Sundar Arjun had protected all those years. Then one night, as Arjun sat in a rented car across from the building, he saw something that made his heart stop. A black SUV pulled up quietly. 3 men stepped out. They didn't wear security uniforms. They moved like ghosts, like people trained to blend in and disappear. They entered through the side door, the one that required a special passcode only a few people had. Arjun knew the codes had changed since he left. That meant someone had given them access. He picked up his phone and replayed the video he had received. He paused on the man talking to Sundar, the one who had leaned in close and made Sundar's hand grip the table. Now, in the grainy frame, he zoomed in as far as he could. The man had a scar under his eye. Arjun had seen that scar before. Years ago, during a security briefing, he had been warned about a former intelligence agent turned contractor, someone who had been banned from entering multiple countries. The name on the report was Leon Varek. Arjun single quotes. As blood turned cold. This wasn't corporate politics. This wasn't a quiet layoff or a personal dispute. This was something darker. He needed answers. He needed to speak to Sundar, but Sundar wasn't answering messages. His old number was disconnected. Every channel Arjun tried led to a dead end. So Arjun turned to someone he never thought he would. Someone he had avoided for years, a woman named Shreya. Asterisk, she had once worked in internal affairs for the company. Sharp, brilliant, but too bold for the people in charge. She had uncovered something years ago that got her quietly transferred. No press release, no goodbye party. Just gone. Arjun found her living in a small apartment above a bookstore in Fremont. When she opened the door and saw him, she didn't smile. "You're late," she said. Arjun blinked. "You knew I'd come?" Shreya stepped aside. "I saw the footage 2 days ago. You're not the only one someone is trying to warn." They sat at her kitchen table, papers and files spread across the surface. She told him what she had found, pieces of a much larger puzzle. A secret project that had started under a different name. Something involving artificial intelligence and predictive behavioral software. Something Sundar had approved, but not the version that was now being built behind closed doors. They took his idea, Shreya said, and twisted it. Arjun frowned. Why would Sundar allow that? She looked him in the eyes. He didn't. Silence filled the room. Then she added, and now I think he's being forced to play along. That hit Arjun harder than he expected. Sundar was not weak. He was not someone who bowed to threats. But what if it wasn't just about him? What if someone else, his family, his children, were the real leverage? Arjun stood up, heart pounding. I have to reach him. Asterisk, Shreya nodded. I can get you inside, but only once. After that, you're on your own. As he left her apartment, the sky above him felt heavier. The air was thick with tension, like a drum being pulled tighter and tighter. Sundar didn't know Arjun was coming. He didn't know the people closest to him had already chosen sides. And worst of all, he didn't know that the very system he helped create was now being used to trap him in a cage he couldn't see got as Arjun drove back into the city. He didn't feel like a bodyguard anymore. Asterisk. He felt like a soldier returning to a battlefield where the enemy wore familiar faces. He was about to break every rule he had lived by, because someone had to protect the man who had protected so much, not just from the world, but from himself. And the next time they met, Sundar might not recognize the man standing in the shadows. Asterisk the message he never sent. City moved as if nothing was wrong. People walked to cafes, checked their phones, and smiled at things that no longer felt real to Arjun. He moved among them like a ghost, unseen, unnoticed. No one knew that a quiet war had begun. A war without armies, without bombs. This was a war of information, of silence, of shadows. And Sundar was at the center of it. Arjun had one chance. Shreya had pulled strings, used old credentials, and rerouted the building's entry logs. For 30 minutes, the system would not know he existed. He had memorized the plan 100 times, each step, each hallway, each moment of exposure. But no plan ever survives exactly as it's written. He arrived at the Google headquarters just before dusk. The golden light of evening made the building seem peaceful, like nothing dangerous could exist inside. But Arjun knew better. He knew the kind of danger that didn't wear a mask or carry a weapon, the kind that smiled at you in meetings and shook your hand just before they stabbed your back. He entered through the service entrance, a narrow hallway with peeling paint and the smell of dust. He used an old key card, one he kept for emergencies. Shreya had overridden the logs for. This door only? He had exactly 28 minutes left. Every step through the corridor brought back memories. Early mornings, late nights, quiet talks with Sundar before big decisions. It wasn't just a building to Arjun. It had been a part of his life almost. Like a home. But now it felt cold. Empty. He reached the private elevator that led to Sundar's office. It should have needed a code, but the panel was already open. That was Shreya's work. He pressed the button and waited, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. When the doors opened, he stepped out into silence. No security. No assistance. The floor was deserted. He moved quickly toward Sundar's office. The door was closed, blinds drawn. He raised his hand to knock, but paused. Inside, voices. He pressed his ear gently to the door. A man was speaking, not Sundar. We control the framework now. If you keep resisting, we'll involve the board. And if that doesn't work, we'll involve your family. A long pause, then Sundar's voice, low and calm, but strained. You're making a mistake. You don't understand what you're building. The other voice laughed. We understand it better than you. It's not about ethics anymore. It's about power. Arjun's breath caught. He knew that voice now. Leon. The man with the scar. The one from the video. Before he could think, he opened the door. The moment froze. Sundar turned first. His eyes widened, not with fear. With something else? Disbelief? Recognition? In something deeper. A flicker of hope. Leon. Turn next. His hand moved slightly, instinctively reaching toward his coat. Arjun stepped inside and closed the door behind him. I wouldn't. Arjun said quietly, eyes on Leon's hand. You shouldn't be here, Leon replied. You're trespassing. Arjun. ignored him and looked at Sundar. We need to talk. Alone. Sundar looked between them, then nodded once. Give us the room, he said. Leon didn't move. This isn't over, he said, almost smiling. Then he walked out, brushing past Arjun like a cold wind. The door clicked shut. And then silence. Sundar looked older than Arjun remembered. More tired. But there was still strength in his posture, even if it was buried beneath layers of exhaustion. Why didn't you come to me? Arjun asked softly. Sundar walked to the window and pulled the blinds slightly open. The last light of day poured in. Because I didn't want you involved, Sundar said. Arjun stepped closer. You were forced out? This isn't business anymore. They're using your work, twisting it. Sundar nodded. I know. And your family? Arjun asked. A pause. Sundar closed the blinds again. They're safe. For now. That was the only answer Arjun needed. It told him everything. He pulled the phone from his pocket. Someone sent me this, he said, showing Sundar the video. They want you protected. I don't know who they are, but they knew how to find me. Sundar took the phone, watched the clip again. His face stayed calm, but his hands were shaking. I tried to stop them, he said quietly. I tried to pull funding, close access, but they locked me out of my own systems. They said they'd make it public, spin the story so I look weak. Like a coward, why didn't you tell me? Arjun asked again, this time. Sundar turned to face him. Because I didn't want you to choose between loyalty and your life. Arjun smiled slightly. I already did. Sundar sighed, sat down behind his desk. They're calling it Project Mirage, he said. An AI system built to predict outcomes, not just decisions, but actions, emotions. It learned from everything. Search data, voice, even tone in emails. It doesn't just predict, it manipulates, quietly. Through suggestions, through ads, through content changes that feel harmless. Arjun frowned. Why would they want that? Sundar's eyes darkened. Because control is more powerful than violence. And they've learned that silence is the best weapon of all? Arjun sat across from him. So what now? Sundar hesitated. Then he reached into his drawer and pulled out a small USB drive. This has the original framework. My code, the version I wrote before they corrupted it. If this gets out, they'll know I broke their silence. But if it stays hidden, they win. Arjun took it, holding it gently. What do you need me to do? Sundar looked him in the eyes. Disappear. Go dark. Find someone who can expose this without being traced. Don't trust anyone, not even old allies. If they find you, they'll silence you, like they silenced the others. Arjun nodded. He stood. Thank you, Sundar said softly. Arjun paused. At the door, you once told me, he said, that the greatest strength in leadership is knowing when to stand alone. Sundar gave a tired smile. I didn't think it would ever come to this. Arjun opened the door. Neither did I. As he stepped into the hallway, the silence returned. But this time, it felt different. He was no longer just protecting a man. He was protecting a truth. And as he slipped away into the night, he knew the hunt had already begun. Asterisk silence as his sounder June left the building through the emergency stairwell. It wasn't monitored. The cameras there had blind spots, and he had studied them over the years like a soldier studies enemy terrain. As he stepped into the night, he didn't look back. There was no time for second thoughts. He carried the truth now, not just a piece of code on a USB drive, but a story no one else dared to tell. And somewhere in the silence behind him, danger had already begun to follow. The city felt different, louder in its quiet, brighter in its shadows. People moved around him, laughing, scrolling, living their lives with no idea that something invisible was crawling into their choices, their thoughts, their conversations. And the more Arjun thought about Project Mirage, the more terrifying it became. He took the long road back to Fremont. He didn't drive straight to Shreya's place. First, he circled the block twice. He changed cars in a parking lot, switching to a dusty gray sedan he'd bought under a fake name years ago, just in case. This was that case. Raya opened the door before he knocked. She had dark circles under her eyes, a cup of cold coffee in her hand, and a laptop open on the floor. You have it? She asked. He nodded and handed her the drive. She took it like it weighed more than gold. It's worse than we thought. He said, they're already using it. She connected the drive to her system. The screen lit up, lines of code flowing, like a digital river. Arjun didn't understand all of it, but he recognized the patterns, not in the code. But in Shreya's expression, her face hardened. They built a shadow internet, she whispered. A layer that sits behind what we see. Everything looks normal on the surface, search results, news feeds, ads, but underneath it's filtered, not by relevance, not by popularity, by influence. They're already shaping what people believe is true. Arjun said nothing. There was nothing to say. Then Shreya froze. No, she muttered. No, this isn't possible. Arjun leaned closer. What is it? She turned the laptop toward him. There was a map on the screen. Not a real map. A digital one, showing points of activity, movement, alerts. One of the red points was blinking. They're tracking the code, she said, not just its location. They built a tracer embedded in the original upload. They knew someone would steal it, and they planned for it. Can we erase it? Arjun asked. No, she said. But we can move it. Asterisk, she opened another laptop. Air-gapped. Disconnected from any network. We clone the core. Isolate the trace, then bury the copy in a dead server farm I know outside the city. It won't last forever. Maybe a few days, but it'll buy us time. And then she looked at him. We go public. Arjun tensed. That'll paint a target on your back. She gave a tired smile. It already is. The next few hours passed in silence, both of them working like surgeons in a war zone. The lights stayed off. Phones were off, windows covered. They didn't speak unless necessary. By morning, the air felt different, heavier. Then it happened. Knock at the door. Not loud, not urgent. Just calm. Too calm. Asterisk. Shreya's eyes met Arjun's. He stood slowly, pulled a small firearm from under his coat, and moved toward the side of the room. She whispered, you need to go. There's a back exit through the laundry room. Take the drive. What about you? He asked. She hesitated. I'll delay them. 5 minutes. No more. He wanted to argue. He wanted to stay, but he knew she was right. He took the drive, nodded once, then disappeared through the shadows. Shreya opened the front door. Two men in gray suits stood there. Not smiling, not threatening, just empty. We'd like to ask you a few questions, one of them said. Of course, Shreya replied. Stepping aside, they walked in, and the moment the door shut, everything changed. Arjun didn't look back. He moved through the narrow hallway, through a broken gate behind the laundry room, and into the alley. He climbed a wall, dropped into a neighbor's yard, and vanished into the morning fog. By the time they found the apartment empty, he was gone, and Shreya was nowhere to be seen. He waited in the car for 2 hours watching the building. She never came out. He didn't know what they did to her, but he knew what they were capable of. The next 48 hours blurred. Arjun moved between safe houses, changing routes every time. He contacted an old journalist he trusted, a woman named Mira, who had once exposed a corruption ring inside a global bank and paid the price with her job. She now ran a tiny news site that barely got 100 views a day, but Arjun knew she still cared about the truth. He met her in an abandoned parking garage. When she saw him, she raised an eyebrow. I thought you were dead, she said. Not yet, he replied, handing her the drive. She listened to everything, didn't interrupt, didn't flinch. When he finished, she said only one thing. If I publish this, I won't just lose my sight. I'll lose everything. Arjun nodded. But you'll tell the truth. Yeah, she said, taking the drive. I will. As she walked away, Arjun stood alone in the silence, but something inside him had shifted. For the first time in weeks, he felt something he hadn't felt since. That first envelope appeared on his table. Hope. And that's when his phone, BIBRATD. He had kept it off. Always off. But now it buzzed once. Just once. A message dot unknown number dot 3 words. We found you. His hands went still. He looked around the garage, dot empty, dot quiet, dot but silence has a sound. And Arjun had learned how to hear it. He put the phone down, started the engine and drove dot fast dot because now it wasn't about escaping dot now. It was about the final choice dot protect the truth or bury it forever. Asterisk the man who disappeared twice eve. City stretched out in front of Arjun like a puzzle that had lost its edges. Streets he once knew by heart now felt unfamiliar. Each alley a trap. Each quiet moment heavy with unseen eyes. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as he drove through the fading light. The message still echoed in his mind. We found you. Only 3 words, but they cut deeper than any weapon. It meant someone had broken through the shadows. Someone had tracked him across all his careful precautions. And worst of all, they were moving faster than he was. He didn't go to his usual safe house. He didn't even go to the one after that. Instead, he headed for a place no one knew. Not even Sundar. It was a cabin in the hills, built years ago with cash and registered under a name that no longer existed. He reached it just after dark, headlights off, taking the last mile on foot through thick trees and cold air. The cabin was old, barely standing, but it had a generator, running water, and no connection to any grid. Inside, he sat in the dark for a long time, thinking, planning, waiting. His mind kept going back to Shreya, to the look in her eyes before she told him to run. He didn't know what had happened to her after that night. Maybe she was being held, maybe worse. But if she was still alive, then she had made the same choice he had, to risk everything for the truth. And he had no way of knowing. If she had published anything yet, the moment she did, they'd come for her too. But if she waited too long, the window would close forever. The people behind Project Mirage weren't just powerful. They were organized, connected, and relentless. They didn't care about right or wrong, only control. He looked at the USB drive again. Not the original. He'd made a second copy before giving one to Mira. Just in case. His plan had always been to pass the truth along and disappear. But now, something told him he couldn't do that. Not yet. He needed help. Not from journalists. Not from lawyers. From someone bigger than the people chasing him. And only one name came to mind. Elon. They had crossed paths once. Briefly, quietly, during a tech security summit in Berlin. Arjun had been in the background, guarding Sundar. Elon had spoken for only 5 minutes, but in that short time, Arjun had seen something few people noticed. ELO and didn't trust anyone either. And that meant he might listen. But contacting him wouldn't be easy. Even harder would be convincing him. Arjun didn't have time for formalities or favors. He needed to get to someone in Elon's personal orbit. Someone who would take a risk. So he went through his memory. Names, faces, patterns. And he remembered. Her. Alexa. She had once been on Elon's personal security detail. She'd shadowed Arjun during a high-profile event in Singapore. They'd shared barely a conversation, but they'd exchanged signals, the kind that people in their world used instead of words. Quiet respect, awareness, discipline. He found her through a back channel. An old contact who owed him a favor. He didn't call her. Didn't send a message. Instead, he left a letter, handwritten, no names, just coordinates, and a time. Then he waited. 3 days. The longest 3 days of his life. He rationed food, stayed off grid, barely slept. Each time the wind shifted, he wondered if it was footsteps. Each crack of a branch made his heart race. But on the 3rd night, just before midnight, a motorcycle pulled up near the cabin. He didn't move. He waited. The rider stepped off, helmet on, full black gear. Then, slowly, the helmet came off. It was her. Alexa. She looked older, colder, but her eyes still had that same clarity. You're lucky, she said. I usually ignore these things. I'm not here for luck, he replied. She stepped into the cabin. Didn't ask questions. Didn't waste time. What do you have? He handed her the second drive. Project Mirage. He said, they're using AI to reshape reality? Not in the future. Now, today, they've already built the infrastructure. They've corrupted Sundar's code, and they've silenced everyone who tries to stop them. Alexa plugged the drive into her device, one that had no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, completely isolated. She read the files. Minutes passed. Then she looked up. This is bad. Worse than you think, he said. She looked at him carefully. You want me to take this to Elon? Asterisk, he's the only one with enough influence and reach to make it public fast, at a scale they can't vary. And he won't be easy to silence. Alexa nodded. But her face was troubled. He's already under pressure, she said. A leak this big? It'll light every fuse they've been stacking under him. So give him a choice, Arjun said. Either we expose this together, or we wait for the world to fall asleep forever. She didn't reply, but she took the drive. Then she did something unexpected. She handed him a phone. A secure line. She said, one number only. If this works, he'll call you. And if it doesn't, she put her helmet back on, then run. And just like that, she disappeared into the night. Arjun stood there, holding the phone. Still silent. Still waiting. But this time, something felt different. This time, the silence wasn't fear. It was the sound right before a storm. He turned back into the cabin, sat down, and stared at the empty screen. And somewhere far away, in a room filled with satellites and screens, the truth had begun to shift, because the man they fired was still moving, and the world was about to hear what they tried to bury. Asterisk, the storm we built the cabin was silent, but Arjun could feel something moving beyond the walls. Not footsteps, not wind, something heavier, something deeper. He had lived in silence for weeks, hunted through shadows, but this was different. This silence didn't feel like danger. It felt like waiting. The phone Alexa gave him sat untouched. On the table, he hadn't called anyone, hadn't dared. Because once it rang, everything would change. Either it would bring a voice he needed to hear, or not at all. He didn't know how long he sat there. Minutes. Hours. Then. Sometime just before dawn. The phone vibrated once. Only once. He stared at the screen. No number. No name. Just one word. Ready. He didn't move at first. He just watched the screen, heart pounding, as 100 memories flooded back. The years standing behind Sundar in silence. The way trust had passed between them without words. The quiet nights when danger felt like a far-off thing. The last moment they'd seen each other. And now this, he picked up the phone and whispered into it. Then let's begin. What happened next wasn't fast. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. Deliberate. Measured. First. A tweet from Elon. A cryptic message. With no context, no names, just numbers and code. Then. A link posted to 3 separate websites. Each time to the second. Each revealing a different part of Project Mirage. One piece showed the corrupted AI models. Another exposed internal memos confirming the manipulation. The third was video. Asterisk footage of Sundar recorded weeks ago, speaking into a camera with tired eyes. If you're watching this, Sundar had said, then it means I failed to stop them. But I haven't stopped fighting. Project Mirage was built to protect people, to help them, not to control them. What they've turned it into is a mirror, not of what we are, but what they want us to believe we are. His voice cracked slightly. Asterisk.